everybody. Welcome to Horror 101 with Dr. AC. My name is Aaron Christensen. Tonight we'll be celebrating the 35th anniversary of one of the true cult hits of home video, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Now, I say home video because even though it did have a brief theatrical release, the hallowed halls of VHS are where most fans initially discovered it and where generations of subsequent aficionados have grown to love it. The brains behind this madcap tribute to such sci-fi classics as Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Mars Needs Women, and of course, The Blob are Stephen, Charles, and Edward Chiodo, not Chiodo, as is often mispronounced, also known as the Chiodo Brothers. Graduating from their own imaginative special effects-driven home movie epics, they provided the titular monsters for 1986's Critters, which garnered them enough goodwill to create their own alien invasion flick, chock full of practical special effects, and seasoned with a frothy mix of horror and humor that still delights audiences to this day. Tonight, we'll look back at the Chiodo's groundbreaking masterpiece, both the film itself as well as Arrow Video's stunning 2018 Blu-ray release. My guests tonight are returning MVPs John Kitley, Ryan Olson, and Jennifer Olson, and for his first appearance on the Dr. AC show, Dan Kiggins from Chicago, Illinois. Come on in, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Oh, let's talk about Killer Clowns from Outer Space from 1988, celebrating its 35th anniversary. I'm just going to go around the circle here. I'll start with you, Dan. When was the first time you saw Killer Clowns from Outer Space? Because I know when the last time was. It was probably this weekend.
It was hours ago. Unfortunately, I wasn't lucky enough to have caught it in 1988, but I think that I caught it right after in a friend's basement, someone who had HBO about a year or two later. The second you heard the title, that was something that you had to see. You know what I mean? Not such an outrageous title. It's like probably one of the more iconic things. Like there's titles that people just throw out there just for shock value or whatever. You just have to see it. Beast of a Thousand Eyes, Night of the Living Dead, but you don't get much more crazy than Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
And this one actually lives up to the to the title.
Yeah.
There are Killer Clowns. They are from outer space. Jen, how about you?
A friend and I rented it from a mom and pop shop down the road, and in her basement we watched it, and it was. I absolutely fell in love with it the first time I saw it. I mean, how can you not? Little Shorty and his little bicycle, and it's just so cute.
Ryan?
My uncle had the original VHS pre-record not too long after the movie came out. Was when I saw it over by his place, and of course, the title, the awesome art on the VHS box. I mean, all that made it a must-see, and then it delivers, like you said, on everything on there. It's totally wild and very entertaining.
And John, I can't believe we've all just been sitting there not paying attention to the elephant in the room. Wait, that's not an elephant, that's a clown. John, first off, where did you come across it? And then you'll have to tell the story of your guest.
I knew about it coming out. I don't remember if it actually hit theaters here, but I knew from Fango, and I knew Chiodo Brothers' work from Critters. But I know when it hit video, it was huge. It's one of those films that you're either going to just absolutely love it or you're not, because it really does a great job, borderline being where it's a straight out comedy like Dan mentioned. But there is some twisted, dark elements in there that I think they did it perfectly, where they didn't tip their hand too much into one or the other. It is a wacky comedy. But again, for the horror fans out there, there's some messed up stuff in this.
And where did you come by your guest here, your Shorty behind you?
Killer Clowns is my wife's, probably her favorite horror film. So last year, I think, when Spirits came out with their new line and they advertised they had the license for Killer Clowns and Shorty was in there, it's like, oh yeah, we have to have one of those.
Must have.
So that was a nice surprise for her when she came home from work and it was set up standing there.
Nice.
That's awesome. The clowns themselves are, the stars of the show. And there's so many great visuals throughout the film. I'm going to do just a quick little synopses just to kind of lead us into it. So just outside the town of Crescent Cove, Mike Tobacco and Debbie Stone spot a strange glowing object falling to earth, also witnessed by farmer Gene Green, who ventures into the woods believing it to be Halley's Comet, but he soon discovers mysterious clown-like aliens and a large circus tent-like structure whose complex interior reveals it to be, dun dun dun, a spaceship. While performing pranks and mock circus acts, the clowns begin encasing the townspeople in cotton candy cocoons using toy-like ray guns. It's up to Mike, Debbie, and Officer Dave Hanson to save the day and the Earth. That's the basic synopsis, but it's really not about the story. It's about the moments, and there's so many great moments throughout this film. You know, I'll just out myself. I was not attuned to the kind of lower brow horror, like the stuff coming out of Empire and Charles Band and Troma. I was just kind of like, I got to get to the quote good stuff first. And so I came to this much later, you know, like on DVD at that point. It was exactly what the title delivers. But I think at that point, I was able to kind of accept it. Although I don't know what you're expecting when it's spelled Killer Clowns with a K from outer space. But yes, I've definitely I have a lot of affection for it now, especially because of the design and all the practical effects that the Chiodo Brothers deliver. I mean, it is kind of amazing. And this Blu-ray from Arrow, you go back and you watch some of their short films, their home movies, where they didn't know what they were doing. Like they had no idea how to make these effects. They just kind of came up with it. And that's what this film feels like. It feels like it's a showcase for them to say, okay, we don't know what we're doing, but here's what we can do.
They had a few of the actors that played the clowns at one of the conventions that I'd been to. And the reason that they walk the way they do isn't acting. It's because they can't fucking see anything. So here you imagine these guys in these suits with very, very little vision with those big ass boots that they're walking in.
I was going to say the clown shoes.
So yeah, they're walking like that, and it just fit because they had no idea. They couldn't see anything. So you give those guys a hell of a lot of credit for what they were doing. I mean, you talk about super performers. That had to be a fun day at work.
What do you guys think is the fear of clowns? Like, what is behind that?
I know why I'm scared of clowns. It was early childhood trauma at a circus. He wasn't really, I don't know, he was a clown, but he was dressed up like a creepy professor with these big Coke bottle round glasses and almost like a Hitler's mustache going on. And he was pretending like he was throwing buckets of water on people, and he decided to throw it at me, and it was confetti. And everybody was laughing, and I was freaked out because he's going, ha, 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 in my face. Yeah.
I didn't realize that my wife had a clown phobia until we were at, I think it was a flashback weekend. Yep. And there was a guy in a clown suit walking around, but she was like underneath John's table, like, get him away from me. There's the kind of exaggerated features. There's the weird, faceless aspect of them. The fact that it could be anybody under there, you don't know. But as the Chiodos say on the commentary, it's that they are so kind of omnipresent in society. Like you just see clowns popping up here and there. They just become kind of normalized. So the idea that an alien could just easily infiltrate, society because you just say, oh, it's a clown. Why it's a clown, we don't know, but it's a clown.
Well, at one point in time, it's strange because they're walking around and it's like they're a clown. Are they trying to fit in being a clown? But then one hides outside the hardware store and pretends to be like the fake monkey that does this. Almost like it's an ant, like he is fake, like he knows something in between the two. Like they know they're absurd, especially in like the drugstore too. You know what I mean? But it's like, are they trying to fit in? Are they trying to stand out? It's just ridiculous all around. You know what I mean? And the strange thing about clowns for me is like, I grew up in the era of like Bozo and stuff like that, where Bozo wasn't so bad. And Pennywise was 2 years after this thing. So clowns weren't completely destroyed, but John Wayne Gacy really did a good number on that. And a lot of it is like people covering themselves and trying to be someone they're not, and fake cheeriness and whatnot is really just kind of off-putting. Another thing about clowns, it's just like people who are clowns and people who are Santa Clauses, it's kind of suspect that they may have weird ulterior interests in children. You know what I mean? And want to be near them, but in an acceptable way in society.
There's a quote from Lon Chaney Sr., who played a clown in a couple of different movies, but he said, "Clowns are fun until you look out your window in the middle of the night and see one in your backyard." So I think that's the beauty of a clown. It has that appearance of cheerful gaiety and fun, but is there a dark side to it? And I think this film takes a hold of that and just exploits the shit out of it. And the fact that it's not just exaggerated looking clowns, but the fact that they have popcorn guns, they have guns that turn people into cotton candy cocoons, which then they feed off of them.
Right.
Mhm.
With a crazy straw. Like
Yeah,
the
with a
Slim
crazy
Jim.
straw. Yeah. And
The
then
best
they
straw
make
ever.
a balloon dog as a sniff out where the people are. I mean, so they play on all these trappings of what you could say where traditional clowns came from, that like, oh, maybe that all stemmed from this. So I think it's a beautiful way that they incorporated all that. And on the flip side, again, it's pretty damn creepy. To Dan's point, that is my favorite scene in the movie, is when that little girl's sitting there playing peekaboo with this clown. And then when the camera pans around, he's got a huge fucking mallet behind him and he's ready to just whack her. I mean, that is set up perfectly. And she has no clue. It's just this little clown. I love this. It's great.
I do want to talk really quickly about our human characters, because they're kind of given the thankless role of carrying the story forward. It's like nobody talks about Mike Tobacco and Debbie, but they are kind of the wheels on which this train runs. So Mike Tobacco is played by Grant Kramer. Debbie Stone is played by Suzanne Snyder. And they're kind of our two young heroes. They're kind of, Steve McQueen and whoever his girlfriend is in the Blob. Who's his girlfriend? I can't remember. So they're kind of our two ingenues. And then they are assisted by Officer Dave Hanson, who's played by John Allen Nelson. But I think we can all agree that our superstar of the human cast is John Vernon, who plays Officer Mooney.
I think that was perfect casting for him too, because most people knew him from either Animal House as Dean Wormer or just the typical roles that he plays. He fit perfectly into this. Damn kids, nobody's going to make fun of me and nobody's going to do this. And when he realizes that moment where, oh no, this isn't a guy in a suit, things change.
You talked about twisted stuff, John. I mean, I think that the ventriloquism scene is so messed up. It's like,
awesome.
What?
The sound effect of him pulling out the slurp.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Again, not a kid's movie.
My kids love it.
That moment's really terrifying also, when the clown is speaking through him and he's like, "We're here to kill you."
The direction and the script, everything's kind of built up to meet the title. So it is coming off kind of heightened, and it's a little cartoony, but I think intentionally so. If I had one criticism, I think I would have liked to have seen the human characters a little more grounded and less kind of like wild and obnoxious, because, the wild and obnoxious terrain is well covered already, because the script is by the Chiodos, and it would have perhaps behooved them to get one more eye on that. Somebody who was a seasoned screenwriter to maybe polish that just a little bit. Stephen Chiodo, who's our director, even though it looks like it was kind of a group effort, but Stephen definitely was asking people to push it higher and higher. On the interviews, Grant Kramer talks about how, he's a serious actor coming off of Hard Bodies. Stephen Chiodo was constantly telling him to just go a little bit further. He's kind of like, I don't know. It does fit all in the same world, but there are times where it just feels like everybody's operating at 11.
Mike Tobacco for sure.
That's the best name. I mean, come on, Mike Tobacco.
His girlfriend's last name is Stone.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think the two guys that play the Terenzi brothers are about as annoying as you can get, but I think that's all intentional.
Oh, yeah.
But you could literally have, other than John Warner, you could have anybody in this film, and to me, it's about the clowns.
Yeah.
They're just filler in there to move the plot forward, to move with the effects and with the clowns. A lot of the other characters could be annoying, but it's all about the clowns.
All the little bits. You mentioned the balloon dog. You know, we've got the popcorn gun. Debbie's trying to get away. She goes to the window. They're standing there with like a fireman's
The
catch.
firemen's.
Mhm.
Just
Clown car.
got
Yeah.
the clown, like a literal clown car.
Yeah, where they all get out of there.
What are you going to do with those pies, boys?
Mhm.
Which they wanted to get Soupy Sales to play that role because, you know, he was famous for
Mhm.
getting hit in the face with pies. Soupy Sales would get hit with like whipped cream pies. Those are like legit pies, like fruit pies with weight to them. Stephen Chiodo was our director, but I think, you know, kind of our MVP is Charles Chiodo, who did the production design. He's the one who came up with basically the look of the clowns, the interior of the spaceship, all of the little, you know, visuals that kind of make that film what it is. I talked about the popcorn gun. That was an actual working prop that shot popcorn.
It should. It cost
so
$7,000. Yeah. And it
Well,
took
I mean,
6
you know.
weeks to make. You know, for $7,000, I'd hope it worked. You know?
They didn't really have CG to rely on back then, so they had to do something to make it work and
And I'm
believable too.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, Ryan, because I think that's what makes this film so amazing and why it continues to endure is because it is all kind of DIY practical special effects. You know, like you can see, you don't necessarily know how they did it, but you know somebody's in that suit and somebody is, you know, moving. That's like a miniature van that, you know, some clown is throwing around. It's like, that is so amazing. And that's kind of the joy for me, you know, like an old school monster kid. Like that's what I love. And that's what they wanted to make. Like that's the kind of film they wanted to make, was something like the Harryhausen, something like those 50 sci-fi films that they grew up loving.
It's just one of those things that they take the mythology of the clown and just go on for there to create these kind of scares, like the puppet show.
Right.
And Shorty's riding a little bicycle that goes up to the bikers and stuff.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah, it's just, it plays on all the stereotypical clown aspects, but then turn them to the horror part. It's like they never lose the wackiness of them being clowns.
Right.
And that's where I think they slipped in some really demented, twisted elements, like the ventriloquist part where he's pulling his arm out of John Warmer and just, you know, slides the blood off the hand. And you're like,
you keep calling him John Warmer. It's John Vernon.
Yeah, Vernon. I keep thinking Dean Warmer. He'll
Do
always
you know
be
his
Dean
real
Warmer.
name?
Yeah, it's John Vernon.
Anyway, really, he was born Adolphus Raymondus Vernon Algopovitz.
Oh, boy.
Wow, that's the mouthful.
I wonder
I
why
never
his
would have gotten that
agent
out.
made him change that.
Yeah, I wonder.
Anyway, back to your story, John.
The whole point of this movie is the clowns. So the script and all of that could have been refined, could have been better, could have had better actors or better characters, like the title says. I mean, that explains it all. You go into that film, you get exactly what the title tells you you're going to get.
You have a clown with his boxing gloves on, and then he punches a guy's head literally off and
Knocks
into a
his
trash.
block
What's
off.
he gonna do? Knock my block off?
You know, they throw pies, and you're like, oh, that's funny, and then it, you know, disintegrates people.
Melts them. And then
You know,
he puts
so-
a cherry on there.
The cherry on it, yes.
Even the theme song by the Dickies
Yep.
has, I mean, it tells you everything in the practically that's going to be in there. And then they, like I said in the beginning, they don't waste time. They get right to it, and we're off to the races, and it's just a wild ride from start to finish, pretty much, you know.
And the one actor we haven't mentioned yet is Royal Dano, who plays the farmer. He's so perfect in this. Like, he has kind of that down home, folksy appeal. His dog and he go out to kind of explore, and that's
Pooh Bear.
Pooh
complete
Bear, yeah.
Pooh Bear the dog,
That's
and it's a
him
callback.
shouting at the, like, once they steal Pooh Bear, the close up, like, I will tear this apart. That's like really gave him a chance to shine. And like, to see him, he's one of my favorite character actors. He's in a million old westerns, that type of thing. But it's almost shot for shot the Blob, the old
Yep.
man getting it up on there.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I guess the dog gets away in the Blob, and they kill the dog in this one. Which,
Well, and I think again, the Chiodos were like, we're going to push this just a little bit further. You know, the dog doesn't get to live here. The little girl, you're like, oh, they've killed the dog already. So that kid is not safe.
I guess when
Nobody's
they
safe.
pull away the face for Royal Dano or whatever, there's a smaller cotton candy next to him that's supposed to be the dog.
And yes, I mean that interior of the spaceship where we have all of the cotton candy cocoons hung up, and for a long time we don't know what that's for until one of the clowns comes out with his crazy straw and just sucks it
Taps
down,
it.
taps it.
The creativity is so incredible. The idea and the inventiveness of all the wacky and crazy things that they came up with, and how they were able to pull it off for such a low budget movie too. I mean, it's pretty impressive that they were able to really realize how the clowns exist and what they do, and they're like the spaceship and all that stuff, and have it be so well realized and fully like formed and created. It is pretty impressive, really. I mean, because I'm sure that movie couldn't have had too big of a budget,
It was $2 million. The brothers did all the effects, so they spent most of the
Right.
money on production. So like I think that's why it turned out so well, that they had the knowledge of
Yeah.
all that and cared
Mhm.
about that aspect of it. All the sets are just repurposed and switched around and doing whatever. And the more you watch it, you can tell that. But it's so colorful and enjoyable or whatever. You really
Mhm.
don't really notice.
Well, and so much of it they're trying to capture in camera. There's that scene of the clown riding the invisible motorcycle next to the car, and like you see it moving back and forth. You're like, oh wow, like how are they doing that? It's like they attached the motorcycle to the side of the car, and it's got a little hydraulic thing moving it back and forth that the clown itself is operating. So they would say, fall back, come forward, go out, go in. So that's all happening in camera. And I just feel like those are the kind of, I feel like I just imagine the Chiodos like sitting around going, hey, what can we come up with? What would be fun?
And imagine the actor in the clown suit going, I can't see shit. What am I doing? How fast are we going?
I love the Chiodos as characters themselves. Like listening to Stephen and Charles like tell the stories behind the scenes, because they have those really pronounced New York accents. Like they're kind of cartoon characters themselves.
You have to be to come up with an idea like this. I mean,
Right.
you really do. And
Yeah.
again, when my introduction to them was Critters, but then when you start to go back and see the films that they had worked on, even though little bit parts like in Sword and the Sorcerer,
Right.
they did the Tomb of the
One of my
Demon with
favorites.
all the faces. They
Yeah.
did that effect. And then you go
Yeah.
back, holy shit, that was them. They did this.
Wow.
So these guys are pretty damn talented, and I was a huge fan of Critters. So I was very excited when I knew they were going to do this, and it was their own project, and it did not disappoint.
Stephen Chiodo is listed as the tech director for Tim Burton's animated film Vincent. I feel like they've just always kind of been there, like lurking around the corner, but because this is their only solo venture, and I wonder why that is. I haven't found any reason why they've not chosen to direct another project, or why nobody's given them the money to. They've been talking about a Killer Clown sequel for years, but that has never come to pass. And it's a little surprising, because I feel like if they wanted to, they could at this point.
The Sci-Fi Channel offered them a deal, and it was like $2 million to do something, and they were saying that they had paid $2 million in the 80s to do
Right,
that.
exactly.
So they didn't want to do that, so they were basing something. There was going to be a TV show along the lines of Critters, that there was a Critters TV show, and I guess that wasn't very well received, and that killed the Killer Clowns TV
Got
show.
it, got it.
At that point.
Plus, I think the fact that they spent a lot of their own time, effort, and money to get the first film off.
Right.
I think if they were going to do another project, they would want to make sure it was monetarily feasible, that because they did this, I think, on a whim, not on a whim, but it was their own baby that they were creating. So they probably ate a lot of time and money to get it out there. And I think at this point they're going to go, we're not doing that again.
Right. I think, it's intended to be a calling card.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have to do another calling card.
Yeah.
Because people know who the Chiodos are. You didn't realize that Team America World Police from the South Park folks, that's the Chiodos that are doing all that marionette and miniature
did
work.
not know that. Wow.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And they had done like the mouths and everything were a little more articulated. Like they were able to actually speak the way humans speak. And Trey Parker was like, no, that's too realistic. Like it needs to be like ma, like on the South Park. Like they had brought in they brought in a model that was like fully articulated, and Trey Parker's like, that's just creepy. Nobody wants to see that. So they had to dial back their technology. You know, like it's totally the Chiodos. Like after you watch it, you're like,
Sure,
of course
absolutely.
It's the Chiodos.
Yeah,
Who else would have done that? Some other folks behind the scenes. You mentioned the Dickies, and that theme song is great. It's a great, catchy theme song. I had it going through my head for the past week now. Thank you very much. But John Massari did the score, and he has. It's one of those kind of stories where John Massari has gone on to have like 300 TV and film credits. But when you look through his TV and film credits, you're like, I don't know any of these shows. I don't know any of these movies. And you just go, there's a whole other universe that just is out there of movies and TV shows that are made that just never get on anybody's radar. And
he did 3 Snake Eaters. You should watch Snake Eater. Actually, maybe you shouldn't.
On the flip side of it, our director of photography, Alfred Taylor, he didn't do that many of them, but the movies he did do are titles that I imagine many horror fans would know. John, I'm seeing you nod. Do you want to?
Spider Baby.
Yep. Swinging Cheerleaders, Mutant.
Monstroid.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Monstrosity.
Monstrosity from 60.
Okay.
But he also did Bloodbath with Jack Hill, or one of the other 2 directors that worked on that.
There's one called Fatal Games that I have not seen yet, but it's a javelin throwing serial killer. And I'm like, I'm totally down for that.
That javelin throwing serial killer.
That's commitment.
You're no kidding, right?
You never see that coming.
Does he get the run going?
You know what?
Every time.
We will circle back around.
100 yards away.
Yeah.
Plus, I also love that IMDb lists that as horror/sport.
All you sports fans out there.
Yeah.
There you go.
And our editor, Christopher Roth, he has some good credits as well. He did Leprechaun 1 and 2. He did Return of the Living Dead 3. He did Dentists 1 and 2. And he did Adam Green's Hatchet, as well as Demon Wind, which is another kind of under the radar. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny that because Demon Wind is another one, but when Killer Clowns hit VHS, there was a time before DVD that on the open market, a VHS for Killer Clowns was well over $100.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows why, but all of a sudden those things became rare as hell. It's unheard of when you think of not now, but back then someone's paying $100 for a VHS tape.
Right.
And that had to have been when the DVD company started coming around going, well, if they're paying that.
Yep.
I mean, when the VHS would first come out, there was that, stupid retail price that you'd have to pay, that stores paid, which was like $100 or whatever,
right.
Something like that.
Right.
But I mean, on the secondary market, I understand what you're saying, John, with that.
No, but that was even after the sell-through prices where videos were $20 maybe, like at Suncoast and all that. But for some reason, Killer Clowns, because of the cult following, and also probably because someone sold one copy on eBay for $100, that elevated the market where everybody else is going, oh, well, then my tape's worth $100.
Yeah.
So,
because in the early 90s, I had a copy of the VHS pre-record. I mean, after I saw it, I wanted to get one, and somebody was selling it, and I scooped it up because I really liked it too.
Well, and I mean, I'd like to think it's the thing where people would buy it and keep it. It wasn't one that was getting traded around. It was one that, and so it's like, I'll give up a lot of things, but I'm not giving up my Killer Clowns, tape.
Totally.
So
that's true.
I found it finally.
I do want to do a quick Killer Clown roll call. I didn't realize how many different clowns there are. They're all very distinctive in terms of their look, but we've got Jumbo, who's the one who puppets Officer Mooney. We've got Shorty, who we've mentioned and who is appearing on our show tonight. We've got Rudy, who's the one who stands in front of the store and does kind of the animatronic thing and then kind of raids the store. We got Spiky, who does the puppet show. And then we've got Slim, who does the shadow puppet show, which I can't believe we haven't mentioned yet. The shadow puppet show.
Yeah, that's the one thing that stuck with me as a kid from my first viewing was the puppet show. If there was one thing I took away from it, it was that. And it was like crazy. I mean, I love the animation, the whole style. It's almost believable what he's doing, and then it becomes Washington crossing the Delaware, and I laughed.
Yeah.
When I saw this, I
Yeah,
laughed.
that's so great.
And it's just such a great bit, but it also like makes you think, like, are these clowns or gods? Because they can like devour people with light, infinitely strong. They can mimic their enemies. They can control dead bodies. They can defy gravity. When that guy flies up into the air, it's like, thank God they have a shortcoming of an easily killable nose. If they get a nose gun, we're doomed. You know what I mean? Not to mention they procreate by popcorn, which they seem to have millions of. So I'm hoping when that thing exploded, all that popcorn didn't come raining down on the ground.
Right.
And much less those pies killed our people at the end of the movie.
That's what I
mean?
said.
You know,
Yeah.
did that melt their faces off 20 seconds later?
You know, one of the funny things is when the one officer does get melted down, then our heroes come up and they're sticking their fingers in it and doing all that stuff, and it doesn't affect them. Yeah, you see the skeleton arm there.
He's just wiping it on his pants.
And they're just, but nothing happens to them. So it must have a very short potency. You know, it's like, oh well, it
only toxic for a short time.
After that, it's just delicious. We have Clownzilla, who is also named Jojo, and that is Charles Chiodo inside of the giant clown. And they treat it like a Godzilla monster by slowing down the film in order to kind of communicate the weight of this giant beast and it, you know, throwing the van around. I love the fact that they're paying tribute to so many of these things that they loved growing up. And again, on the Arrow Blu-ray, there are all of their short films that they made, and you can kind of see them evolving as filmmakers, but also just amazed by the fact that they would read about, you know, Matt, you know, like, okay, well, apparently you paint on glass and you stick that in front, and you're able to do, you know, double exposure. And I'm like the fact that they're just like going, well, how do you do that? Who knows? Let's figure it out.
I don't want to say the main reason, but they did all the Critters sequels because they were refining the animatronics and the techniques of how to. So even though the later day sequels are not up to par with the first two,
just in terms of the story, the effects.
In terms of the story, but the effects, they got better and better. And I know Steve Johnson had said that the reason he did some of the Howling sequels, he just wanted to get paid to try out different new techniques and new applications. Even though he knew what the stories were and what the film was going to be, he's basically getting paid to try out different experiments and stuff. And I think that the brothers did that with the Critters films. And even though the last two films are really not good films, it is fun to watch the effects.
Any final thoughts on Killer Clowns from Outer Space? I'm thrilled that it's, you know, it's still out there, and I think people are still discovering it to this day. I like the fact that its legacy, you know, continues, but also that there's somebody out there who's discovering Killer Clowns for the first time right now.
We introduced it to a bunch of our friends, a bunch of our kids' friends at Halloween. We had a Halloween party, and that's what they watched. So it was fun seeing that new generation, seeing this going, what is this?
Yeah.
Did it go over well?
It did. They loved it.
I think that shows the effectiveness of this film, because we're talking about one that was made 35 years ago.
Yeah.
That still can resonate with modern day younger fans. That just shows you how powerful of a film it is. The jokes still work. And I think that also goes to what clowns are. I mean, the effectiveness, positive or negative, is still there. And it reigns true for this film as well. It still works for any age. When we saw it when we were in our teenagers or early 20s, to younger kids now, they're 10 or below, they're either going to be completely terrified by it or they're going to be laughing their butts off.
Well, our 6-year-old has seen it twice. I mean, our youngest, he watched it with them when they had their friends over. And then when we watched it last night, in preparation for this, he was in there watching with it. And, you know, I mean, Gabe, our middle child, he has tons of Killer Clowns memorabilia and stuff, like shirts, you know, from Spirit, as I'm sure it is with Dawn, you know, the blanket and all that stuff. I mean, he's always wanting Killer Clown stuff. So, you know, and from that, you know, obviously Thorin has seen that stuff and it's rubbed off on him too. And, you know, he just thinks it's great. I don't know if he necessarily gets the scarier part of it yet, but you know, he's entertained by it. He was having fun like we were.
But it's just so original, and everything they do is just, you know, the miniatures, the forced perspectives, and just everything is a lot of fun. And as much as there's some hokey comedy and whatever, a lot of it is just still hilarious. Like the clown car killed me, and the another door, and the another door. All that stuff was just great. So I think it'll live on forever. It doesn't want to die. A lot of things are just done and forgotten. I think this is just like a ball rolling downhill, just getting more and more popular as it goes. And like
kind of like a Critters ball.
There's always going to be scary clowns, but I think they've really dug out their niche in pop culture, and that's not going to go anywhere. And there's a video game coming out soon, and hopefully they have a big enough stake in that maybe that might be the thing that kicks it over and gives us the next great thing. It's a great movie to watch with people. I mean, you put this on, it's just fun. You don't have to sit there and concentrate on everything, even if you looked up every once in a while.
Well, it is a movie of moments, you know, so it isn't about kind of like the overall arc, and you don't have to pick up on things as you go along. It is all of these little things strung together. I wonder if the appeal is the analog quality of it, you know, especially for a generation that's been raised on CGI now, to see things that are actually taking up space and have weight and are communicating ideas in a way that perhaps they're not familiar with, that there may be some novelty in that. And I think that's why the Harryhausen, you know, stop motion continues to endure. And hopefully this will be something that endures as well for another 35 years.
Well, it really seems to only be getting bigger and bigger. I mean, obviously, when you see stuff like what Spirit is doing, I mean, they're always rolling out something new, and it seems like it's only getting more and more, which obviously is a great thing. I just hope that the Chiodos still have control over some of it, and that they're getting, you know, benefits from all of this stuff as well. I hope that that's the case as well.
Well, and I think what you just said, Ryan, is kind of key. These are such distinctive characters. They're unlike any other characters out there. There's such a variety to be found in the clowns, and they're so colorful. You know, they're so exciting to kind of watch and to have on your mantle. So I think you're right. I don't think that the merchandising of it is ever going to go away. And I also hope that the Chiodos have a healthy stake in that.
The beauty of what they've done is that I'm sure there's a lot of Killer Clown-esque merchandise, drawings, costumes, or whatever. It's always going to be referred to, that's on one of the Killer Clowns. So even though it isn't official, they've incorporated that as their brand. So even if it's a cheap knockoff, it's a Killer Clown action figure or whatever it is, because it's so embedded in filmdom. They've got the market on that.
It's a legacy. You know, like they will always be the Killer Clown guys. And real quick, I didn't think about this, but it makes sense. Like originally it was just going to be Killer Clowns. That was going to be the name of the movie. And because this was coming out in the 80s, they were like, well, that sounds a little bit too much like a slasher flick. So they added in the From Outer Space. And again, that's the perfect title for this movie, because you know exactly what you're in for.
And
do you know what they're adding for the sequel? In 3D. Oh, they're adding.
And they can bring in the whole William Castle element and have people throwing pies at people in the audience.
Perfect.
Knock blocks off.
Shooting popcorn at the audience.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, hit that thumb, because you're not going to want to miss what we got coming up next. Thank you all. And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.